Story 1. Turning something you love into a business. Often, instead of saying, I turned my passion into money, it's, I turned something I love into work. I am currently scaling back my photography business because I don't love photography like I used to. Just work now. Story 2. Running a cute little coffee shop and bookstore. I bet you picture yourself just having a cup of coffee and chatting about Cormac McCarthy with an elderly gentleman in a tweed coat. You are never going to be profitable, but you will not realize it until about 2.5 years in. Also, that guy never showed up, he's got a Kindle. Story 3. Starting a business. Everyone talks about the freedom and potential money, but the reality is constant stress, long hours, and a ton of financial risk. It's way harder than the be your own boss vibe suggests. Story 4. Living in Japan as a foreigner. There's a certain subset of people that really romanticize Japan and Japanese culture as highly advanced technologically and socially. It's not that Japan is actually a particularly bad place to live, but they still utilize antiquated technology, have dated social mores and brutal work-life balance, and are quite xenophobic and openly turn away foreigners from many services, even medical care. It's not some anime utopia where everything is perfect. It's quite a challenging place to live for foreigners. It seems Japan welcomes the visitor but does not always welcome the immigrant. Story 5. Becoming a small farmer. You work harder than you thought was possible. More of your body hurts than you knew you had. You make less than you ever thought possible, and people still tell you they can get it at Walmart for cheaper. Story 6. Traveling for work can be exhausting due to long flights and airport procedures. Living out of a suitcase, and catered meals that limit your food choices, most of which are unhealthy. Every minute of your time is scheduled, and you have the obligation to spend the entire time with your colleagues. Definitely from 9 to 5, but also during your lunch break and usually dinner. Then, drinks after work are an expectation, and sometimes there's a group brunch. You are always in performance mode and often meeting new people daily. You miss your family, including pets, and have no time to switch off and just be yourself. It's even worse if time zones mean you can only talk to your family in the early mornings and late at night. Imagine how tough it must be when you have young kids. My husband travels every few months, usually internationally, and for about a week at a time. This is way less than some people have to, which I am thankful for. I recently spent 2 days at a work conference for the first time and finally realized he wasn't lying when he said he usually hated traveling for work. It is probably fun if you are single and genuinely love your work, but not for me, thanks. Story 7. Birthing and raising a baby. People will acknowledge that it's not easy. Sure, but it's so much harder than imagined, especially if you don't have a good support system. May I just say I'm glad so many people felt they could relate to each other in this subject and have an open discussion. In our society, we tend to forget we are allowed to have multiple complex emotions, even more so when it comes to parents and children, and it's not as simple as positive versus negative. Anyone who agrees with this post can still love their children and love being a parent and not want to change things. You can weirdly hate being a parent but still love and care for your kids. You can also adore kids and never want to be a parent yourself. It's all valid. Feel how you feel and take everything one baby step at a time. Just try not to take those feelings out on the world. Story 8. People romanticize working yourself to the bone as some badge of honor. Like hustling all the time is the only path to success. You see it all the time. Glorified late nights, sacrificing weekends, constantly grinding. The reality? It's exhausting and often just leads to burnout, not success. In the movies, the overworked genius hits a breakthrough and changes the world. But in real life, you're more likely to just end up stressed, sleep-deprived, and missing out on everything else that makes life worth living. Balance isn't lazy. It's smart. Real success usually happens when you have the energy and mental space to actually enjoy it. Story 9. Objectively looking at your life and deciding to turn it around. A lot of people think that the hard part is actually just being able to evaluate your life objectively and see what you need to change, and it gets easier after that. But the truly hard part is actually processing it and keeping that mindset down the track. A lot of people go through a very unhealthy cycle of being disappointed and depressed with their lives and themselves, genuinely want to change for the better, but end up subconsciously pushing those thoughts out of their brain. Story 10. Island living. Life is hard unless you're rich. Yes, I live in paradise, but I pay around $5.25 for a gallon of gas, and my rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,200 plus utilities, which are outrageously expensive. A box of cereal is about $15, and it's not family-sized. My mail gets lost in Puerto Rico quite often. Power outages are frequent, and we just got running water back after being without it for 2 days. Story 11. Owning a restaurant. Every so often, someone would talk about how much fun it would be to run a restaurant. I used to do restaurant reviews on the side for a small local newspaper. A colleague at my day job told me he and a friend were going to start a restaurant, putting in $75,000 each. They had no food service experience and thought it would be fun. I took him to a cafe nearby that had excellent food, called the owner over, and asked him if he had any advice for my colleague. He replied, "Get your $75,000 in cash, say $100 bills. Bring the bills here. I'll give you a plate and a book of matches. Put the bills on the plate and set them on fire." "What?" said my friend. "It's simple. You'll lose the same amount of money as you would in the long run, but you'll save yourself months and months of pain. Eating at a restaurant can be relaxing. No other aspect of that business is." Story 12. Being a caregiver. Many people picture caring for an elderly loved one, child, or partner as meaningful and fulfilling. While it certainly can be, it is also incredibly challenging. Story 13. Writing a novel. People don't necessarily think it's easy, but even when you're on a roll, it's the biggest time commitment. It's not something you can squeeze in before work as a permanent routine. Story 14. High-paying corporate jobs. It's not all boss babes and power suits. Depending on the industry, it's 90-hour weeks and no energy for life. I had the big window corner office, a condominium on the 32nd floor on the Vegas Strip, car service, laundry service, cleaning service, housekeeper, and a closet full of designer items. It was great that I was able to do certain things like take care of myself and my family, but that job literally sucked the life out of me. After 3 years, I was so depressed that I didn't get out of bed for 3 weeks and almost lost my job. That life is not what people make it out to be. Story 15. Life as an artist. It's hard work for little pay. It can be very discouraging and degrading when people talk down about your work. It's frustrating to see people way less talented than you succeed because of luck or already having wealthy friends. There are many people more talented than you competing with you for sales or clients. It can be cutthroat dealing with galleries, museums, and art collectives. And at the end of the day, there's always the thought, you might just be the next Picasso, but that will only happen after you die, so you won't get to enjoy any of that fame or fortune. Story 16. I'm not a big fan of the jealousy, overprotective, possessive trend making the rounds as of late. I get the desire to be protected and the logic behind your partner feeling jealous, but I honestly can't fathom how normalized it has become. I don't want to feel jealous. I firmly believe that feeling is born from insecurity or a lack of trust. Story 17. Having twins. So many people tell me they would love to have twins. The reality is that you are going to have a high-risk pregnancy and have a high chance of giving birth prematurely. Having 2 newborns is exponentially harder than 1 newborn, the same with the sleep deprivation, and those newborns are more likely to have issues you do not get with a full-term baby. My twins had both colic and reflux, and I was so tired I hallucinated. It might look like I had it together pushing 2 sleeping newborns in their stroller, but the reality was that I averaged 1 to 2 hours of sleep a night, and the reason I was out pushing them in the stroller was because that was the only way they slept for any decent amount of time. I love my twins, but would have preferred they came at least a year apart. Story 18. Working in the beauty industry as a professional makeup artist. Everyone thinks it's glamorous and fun because you get to look cute and make people feel beautiful. Yes, it is fun, but that is only 10% of it all. It's tough, mentally draining, expensive, and not an easy career. I wish people would see that instead of thinking it's just a fun, glamorous job. It's so much more. It's tough and tiring, and you can get neck, back, and wrist problems. However, it is absolutely wonderful if it's your passion. I feel blessed to own my business of 10 years, working with amazing people. I've worked with some cool people and did some great gigs. I don't know how those higher-up makeup artists do it. I can't believe the pressure they face. But anyways, just thought I'd share. All jobs in the beauty industry are tough. Story 19. Being a doctor, I've had clients who are doctors, and they feel like that's all anyone sees when they see them. Their job severely gets in the way of a social and family life, depending on the specialty, of course. Story 20. Revolutions. So many people are screaming for one and don't comprehend at all what they are asking for. When the government is overthrown, all of those services that the poorest people have are cut off. Every single one. No food stamps, no healthcare, no shelter, nothing. The first thing that happens in times like that is a whole lot of violence, and the main victims are women and children. I tried to tell someone this, and she replied that, as a black person, she knows what the stakes are. If you think things are going to work out for you, you're not really thinking about consequences. Story 21. Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. They always say this is the way to go, but goddamn it, years of 10 to 12-hour workdays, and a lot of crazy stuff. It's much rougher than you would think. Far more work goes into starting a career for someone who isn't a college graduate than people would think. You know, it's hard work, but until you do it, you don't know for real. I've come across so many people who give the bare minimum at work and are surprised when they don't last long at the company. Some people think they're literally entitled to a career or money without the hard work that comes with it. And yes, a lot of achievement is based on chance. But I'm saying what you need to do when you get that chance. Story 22. Caring for a severely disabled child. My aunt is severely intellectually disabled, age 54, and lived with my grandparents until my grandpa died and my grandma was moved to a home with Alzheimer's. She moved in with us as my dad was her next of kin, and it's been 14 years. She is unable to handle money, book appointments, work, or even cook besides using a microwave. She doesn't remember things at all long term. You can tell her not to do something, and you turn around and she's doing it again. Parents think disabled kids are cute, but the 5-year-old severely autistic child with anger issues becomes much less cute when he's 20 and can harm an adult. It's hard for them to realize that their child, depending on their disability, will never be independent, move out, marry, or have the life they imagined. A lot of these parents will take care of them until they die, and then the child needs other caretakers after that. It's a lot of stress on families and relationships as well as finances. Story 23. Roughing it. Going on controlled camping trips is one thing, but spending any period of time without a guarantee of clean water, a hot meal, or shelter is a real nightmare. Story 24. Insomnia. Sleep deprivation takes a toll on your health, and no, you will not be writing poems and drinking coffee at night when having no sleep. You will be suffering. Story 25. Professional sports involve athletes, coaches, staff, and even media. It requires working nights, weekends, and holidays. There is high stress and hard work with high expectations. Many are paid handsomely, some are paid well but only for a short duration, and many behind-the-scenes staff are not paid very well. Story 26. Mental illness. It's often portrayed in fiction as something that accompanies genius or creativity. I'm not a genius. I'm kind of creative. Mental illness just sucks. There's no upside. Story 27. Being in the Special Forces, whether it's the Special Air Service, Sea, Air, and Land Teams, Green Berets, or Marine Special Operations Command, the high-speed stuff is great for Hollywood. But they never publish the fully equipped operators stalking through the underbrush, immediately losing their composure because they walk through a giant spiderweb. Yeah, I've seen that happen. Story 28. One thing people seriously romanticize is relationships and marriage. We are flooded with images of perfect couples and happy endings. But in reality, maintaining a healthy relationship takes a lot of work, patience, and commitment. It's not just date nights and picturesque moments. It's dealing with disagreements, supporting each other through rough times, and putting in real effort to grow together, even when things get messy. Marriage is even more intense. It is not a magical cure-all for relationship issues, and no amount of romance can replace the hard work required to make it last. There are days when things feel routine or even tough, and you have to keep showing up and choosing each other. People do not talk enough about that side of it. Story 29. Growing up poor and on the streets, I understand you persevered through that, but don't make it seem like you're for that street life. Want better for yourself. Story 30. Snow. It's cold up in the mountains. And the ones romanticizing it are those people who don't have to wake up early in the morning and melt ice so that some people get warm water. It's brutal to work in the morning when everyone is sound asleep in their blankets. Story 31. Taking care of your elderly relatives at home because you promised them not to put them in a nursing home is rewarding. Sure. But nobody tells you that the physical part is the easiest. Adult diapers and housekeeping are easier than the awkward, painful role reversal. The hard part is going from them being in charge and having unlimited self-determination to having to step in and tell them what is feasible and what is not because you're the one in charge now. It's hard to tell your grandmother no, she can't drive, or your grandfather he can't go hunting because those aren't safe activities for themselves or the people around them anymore. It is wonderful to keep them close, but not like a warm and fuzzy Hallmark card.